right, under the camera you see a sheet of printmaking paper, and I've pulled one print. I added ink here to my plate, and then I carefully transferred the ink to this printmaking paper. You can see that the print is always in reverse, always a mirror image of the plate, okay? So remembering that if you ever were to use words or numbers or symbols, they will, if you do them correctly here, reading correctly on the plate, they will in fact reverse and show as reversed in the print. So just to be aware of that, okay? You can see where the object of the bird and the flower and the branches were cut and glued down to their base. There's this white halo around everything, and it is hard to ink around all those small edges, even though they are small and flat. So it may be that this was a mistake. It might have been better to have put these flowers out separately, a little farther away from the original branch, so that everything would have printed a bit more clearly, kind of like this flower did over here. You can see that when you press into the foam with a pen or a blunt pencil, the mark you leave does not print. It is white here in the image. Everything that you don't touch with ink, and that would include these lines that were pressed into the styrofoam, they do not print. Now I have another plate ready to go. Let's see how this goes, how this progresses. That sheet's a little dirty, so I might use that later on for a work surface. Here is my plate, and it looks like I have detailed out one of the fish, but I haven't detailed out the other. So let's make this about a background texture and also about two objects, two pretty big objects against that background texture. This is an easy start. Your next plate that you create will be bigger than this, and so therefore you'll have to have at least 3 objects, okay? But this is your first printing project. So I think if this is going to be a fish, I will once again add some lines here in the tail fins, and those are the only fins that this fish seems to have. I can, of course, draw a fin, and I'm going to draw a fin there and add a line there. I'm going to draw an eyeball there. Remember, by pressing into the foam, you will create an area that will not print. It looks like I might want to go ahead and do a little outlining here. I just feel the need. So I'll add an extra line there, an extra line there, there. It looks like also that I need to add some gill slits to this one. So I'll add gill slits, and possibly this one has scales also, but the scales may be different in nature. So I'll go ahead and add this type of scale and see if that goes well. A little unusual, but I think it's going to be okay. And I'm going to start to print in just a moment. Okay, I'm done with that fish, detailing it out, ready to print it. Now, this fish was just recently glued down. It's moving a little bit. I probably should wait 20 minutes for that glue to dry a little bit better, but I'll go ahead and proceed. Here we have a bench hook. It's this metal hook that sits on the edge of the bench. We have a brayer. That would be this tool right here, and we have a bead of ink. I'll show you what a bead of ink is, that I've spread out here on the bench hook with my brayer to coat the bench hook and the brayer uniformly with ink. In art, a bead of ink or a bead of glue or a bead of paint is simply a line. So I'm not going to squeeze much out, because you know there's such a thing as using too much of something. So a very short bead or line of ink, I went ahead and put the cap right back on the ink bottle or the ink tube, and here I am spreading it out. You don't want to spread the ink all the way out to the edges for fear that you're going to get it on the table. Okay, so there I have the ink spread out. I'm looking for that texture called an orange peel texture on the surface. It looks a little bit rough and bumpy like the surface of an orange peel, and that will tell you that you have just the right amount of glue, the right amount of ink on your brayer. Now, as far as working on your plate, applying ink with your brayer, I went ahead and put a piece of scrap paper down. We'll get you some of that. I'm going to go ahead and gently ink. You see the first things to catch ink are these elevated portions, these fish that I glued down, okay? One reason we call this a relief print is because when you build it in relief, certain portions rise up in relief. And in this case, it would be the fish. Turn this around. Notice that it's a little tricky to ink because you have to ink around the fish. It's not going to be perfect. You're going to try to do your best job, but that's okay if it's not perfect. Just approach it. Here, let's do this. Let's go ahead and move this around here. Outside of the camera, you see me picking up more ink from the bench hook to get into all these small little nooks and crannies coming in from many directions. The ink is very sticky, so it wants to stick to and pull up the styrofoam plate. That's okay. Turning this around again. Being careful not to get too much on the table. You can be doing this inking at the back counter, by the way. You don't need to do this at your table. Now let's go ahead. I think it's in pretty good shape. I think we're about ready to go ahead and pull a print. Now pulling a print is exactly that. We're going to place this plate, this inked plate, on a new fresh piece of paper. Apply pressure, transfer the ink, and then pull the plate away, called pulling a print. Let me get this out of the way because that's a little bit messy. Here comes a fresh piece of paper right here. Put that down. That might be 2 sheets. Here I go. I'm going to take this carefully and turn it upside down. Put it right in the middle of that fresh piece of paper. Press down so the sticky ink can attach itself to the paper. I'm going to turn the paper over here in just a moment. Trying to get 1 sheet, not 2. There we go. You can see already the moisture from the ink soaking through the printmaking paper. I'm going to help with the transfer process by taking this baron. This is called a baron, and I'm going to rub it firmly. And I'm going to spend my time doing this. We'll check the results in just a moment. Firmly, I can use the edge of the baron to get up here close to the fish. Make sure the ink that's up there close to the fish is having a chance to be transferred to the paper, catching my corners, catching my edges, going over every inch a second time, a third time, just to be certain that I'm getting a good transference of the ink, a good quality print. Ideally, in printmaking, all your prints from the same plate will be exactly the same. That won't necessarily be the case here in the classroom, but if you can come up with 1 print of superior quality, that will be your grade, okay? This portion of the project is going to be worth 40 points. 2 fish or 2 objects against a textured background or a patterned background, and then the final is a bit larger. It has to have 3 objects. Remember, I like good size and good detail. We're going to check to make sure the transference of ink was pretty good. If you think you can transfer a little better, get back in there before you pull the paper all the way off. And that looks pretty good there. Let's check it over here. How does it look over here? Well, could be worse, could be better. See if I can transfer a little more ink right there. And then I'm going to pull the print, pull it off of its plate, and let's compare the 2. Not bad. So here are my 2 fish, and this is the actual print where the ink transferred from the plate to the printer paper, and here is the plate. And notice, here, let me turn it this way. The 2 are kind of mirror images of each other, okay? So when you do print, you get the very opposite of what you'd expect. So here in the plate, this fish is swimming, well, as you see it here in the camera, to one side of the paper. Here it flips and swims to the other side. The details that I put in the background, put in the fish, worked out really good. Those lines that I made with a green pen worked really well, both in the background and on the fish. Okay, now you try.